Late at night in the city, Tommy is out with his girlfriend Gabby. They meet some friends outside a club and Tommy consumes a few uppers, but Gabby turns them down. Since the line isn't moving, Tommy goes to bother the bouncer. The man tells him to leave, so Tommy slaps him. The bouncer is furious and the friends rush to pull them apart before things escalate. Moments later, they're drinking at a different club. They also go to the bathroom to get into some dangerous habits. Tommy keeps telling Gabby to take some too, but she refuses, so another girl grabs the remaining powder. Afterward, Tommy dances with the other girl and even kisses her. When the group leaves the club, they get loud on the street. Tommy ends up puking, but this doesn't stop him from drinking again. In the next club, Tommy gets naughty with the other girl. Gabby sees them and immediately drags the girl away by her hair. Tommy likes how jealous she is. At the end of the night, Gabby tells him to get in a cab with the rest of the group. However, Tommy prefers to walk so he can keep bothering people. He pees on a bus stop, takes more uppers, goes to another club, and gets naughty with his hand in the bathroom. While he wanders the streets in an awful state of mind, a car suddenly stops behind him and the driver comes out to catch him. Sometime later, Chris meets with Rena at a restaurant. He asks her a few questions to make sure she has no kids or addictions. Then he makes her sign a contract to hire her as his cleaning lady. The next morning, Rena rings the bell at Chris's home and he puts on his wig before opening the door. Once she's inside, Chris scans her with a metal detector and takes away her phone, which he puts in a safe. Then he reminds her that her contract includes a non-disclosure agreement and some non-standard tasks. At that moment, Chris's wife Catherine enters the room and Rena greets her, but Catherine leaves without a word. Afterward, Chris gives Rena a tour of the house and introduces her to his 10-year-old son Jonathan. Chris doesn't let Rena enter the couple's bedroom because Catherine is inside and explains that nothing must be out of place or Catherine will freak out. Next, Chris takes her to a cellar, where she's shocked to find Tommy chained up. He's sleeping on a thin mattress on the floor while jungle noises play on the stereo. A terrified Rena tries to leave, so Chris tries to explain that Tommy is just sick and they're trying to make him better. He also reveals that he ran a background check on her, so he knows her visa status is complicated because there's a removal order. He promises he's not judgmental about her past and mentions he has a friend at the home office, so Rena agrees to stay. Then Chris shows her their cleaning products, saying she can't bring anything from the outside because they only use eco-friendly, non-toxic, and chemical-free stuff. He also mentions that this is a zero-waste household. She must clean the cellar, but she mustn't pay attention to anything Tommy says since he's in a state of stress. If she feels threatened, she's allowed to use a taser or pepper spray that Chris provides. When Tommy finally wakes up, he sees Rena and desperately asks for her help, but she ignores him and rushes upstairs. Chris assures her that they won't keep Tommy down there for long. He's just going through a rebellious phase. Rena agrees to keep the job, which means she'll be coming 2 days a week. In the evening, Chris brings some food for Tommy, who throws it on the floor and starts threatening him. Chris steps back when Tommy tries to reach him, and the boy pulls the chain so much that he almost chokes. After helping him get in bed, Tommy goes back to having dinner with his family. When Jonathan wonders if Tommy liked the food, Chris says yes. Catherine asks what he's done, but Chris assures her he has everything under control. The next day in the cellar, Chris plays a video of one of Tommy's many nights out taken from social media. It shows a car crash, and Tommy celebrates it. Chris points out all the crimes Tommy committed, but the boy just laughs. Then the TV shows a video of Chris and Jonathan talking about the huge amount of drunk driving related incidents in the UK, but Tommy doesn't take it seriously. In the afternoon, Tommy keeps pulling at the chains to try to break them to no avail. On the TV, a video speaks about ways to control aggression. In his struggle, Tommy accidentally kicks a table and spills his jar of pee all over himself. Meanwhile, Chris convinces Catherine to come to the cellar with him. They find Tommy curled on the bed and Chris approaches him to ask about the mess. Suddenly, Tommy throws his wet pants at Catherine and jumps on Chris to start choking him with the chain. Chris tells Catherine to go upstairs, and as soon as she's out of sight, he hits Tommy to overpower him. Afterward, Chris apologizes to Catherine and runs her a bath. When he goes downstairs, Jonathan asks if it's okay if he reads Charlie's comics. Chris says yes, but he must keep it a secret from Catherine. Then Chris returns to the cellar with a suitcase and says that Tommy should apologize to his wife, but Tommy thinks they're the ones who owe him an apology and describes all the violent things he wants to do to them. After taking off his glasses, Chris opens the suitcase to reveal a bunch of weapons. He uses the pepper spray on Tommy's face and proceeds to beat him up with a baton while repeating "bad boy." Later, Jonathan asks Chris if he could spend time with Tommy. Chris says it's a good idea, but Tommy isn't ready yet. The next day, Rena returns and starts cleaning the cellar. Tommy calls her out for ignoring him and Rena explains there's nothing she can do. Her accent makes Tommy realize she's a foreigner, so he insults her until he makes her cry. At that moment, Chris comes in and notices what happened, so he tells Tommy to apologize. Tommy refuses and tries to insult him too, but he gets scared when Chris comes closer. After some hesitation, Tommy says he won't do it again. Once Rena is gone, Chris gives Tommy some medicine and says they have a surprise for him. When he tries to touch his arm, Tommy flinches, so Chris swears they aren't psychopaths. Moments later, Tommy is chained to the living room ceiling and Jonathan hands him a bowl of popcorn so they can watch a movie together. Jonathan chooses Charlie's favorite film. Catherine hears the noise from her bedroom and decides to come down to sit with her family. The movie has a very sad ending and Tommy finds himself crying. He's so uncomfortable with this that he asks to be taken back to the basement. Later in bed, Catherine tells Jonathan that the film reminded her of Charlie and admits she dreamed about him last night, crying as she describes it. Meanwhile in the cellar, the TV is playing a video to teach kids that illegal substances are bad. Tommy stretches his whole body to try to turn it off to no avail. Then he tries to pull the chain out of the wall but it doesn't work either. The host in the video says that the secret of change is not in fighting the old but in building the new, which gives Tommy an idea. The next day, Tommy apologizes to Catherine, using long caring sentences and swearing he feels very ashamed of himself. He even promises not to do it again. After some hesitation, Catherine accepts his apology and Chris says he's proud of him. Next, Chris plays another video and Catherine brings Tommy a pair of glasses. At first Tommy swears he doesn't need them, but when he tries them on he's shocked at how much better everything looks. The new video shows more of the chaos and destruction that Tommy has caused on the streets. Tommy doesn't understand the point and says his probation officer will look for him, but Chris has already run a background check on him and knows there's no probation officer. Somehow Tommy has managed to get away with all his crimes without being noticed. Later Chris makes the chain a little longer so Tommy can use the bathroom. Tommy takes the chance to turn off the stereo too, tired of the sounds of nature. Catherine brings him Charlie's clothes and a book, but Tommy thinks only losers read. When Catherine gets upset, Tommy remembers his plan and grabs the book to give it a chance. At that moment someone rings the bell. Catherine rushes to the door and discovers it's the mailman with a package. Chris threatens Tommy to keep him quiet until the mailman is gone and tells him good boy when it's done. Catherine reminds Jonathan not to open the gate for anyone. The next day Catherine finds cigarettes in Jonathan's clothes, so Chris talks to his son about it. Jonathan says he just found the cigarettes around and admits he smoked one, but promises not to do it again. Chris reveals he also smoked one when he was young, but the important thing is that he didn't like it and dropped it. When Jonathan shows understanding, Chris calls him good boy. However, Catherine still thinks Jonathan deserves to be punished, so she makes him smoke another cigarette. Jonathan keeps coughing and feels his throat burning, hating every minute of it. When he's done, Catherine reminds him that they love him and that they must always destroy what destroys you. The next time Rena comes, Tommy apologizes to her and asks for a cigarette. She claims she doesn't smoke and gives him gum instead. Tommy tries to ask her for details about the house but she ignores him and leaves. Then Tommy stretches into the laundry room to try to grab the cleaning products to no avail. In the kitchen, Chris considers changing the plastic knife and fork for real ones, but decides against it. When he goes to the cellar, Timmy pretends he was reading and calls Chris constable because he's finally realized he's a cop. He begs for his freedom and promises not to tell anyone, but Chris just gets the TV ready. When Catherine joins them, they watch a video of Tommy and his friends harassing a young boy. Tommy feels uncomfortable watching this and asks them to stop it as he cries. The next day Chris tries to help Jonathan with his math homework but he's too harsh, so Catherine takes over the lesson. After grabbing the taser, Chris goes to the cellar to get the dirty dishes, revealing he's finally using the metal cutlery. Tommy is reading for real now and admits he doesn't understand the big words in the book. Chris offers some guidance and Tommy gets an idea. If he finishes this book, he wants to know the football scores. Instead, Chris offers to bring him a non-alcoholic beer for every book he finishes. That night, Chris finds Catherine outside and rushes to her side. She says that it's finally time. The next morning Tommy is reading while exercising. At that moment the family comes to the cellar with a cake, singing happy birthday. Tommy blows out the candles and has a slice as Catherine explains that Jonathan baked it. She also has an idea for a present, but first Chris puts him to sleep. Moments later Tommy wakes up in a big open field. He's still chained but he's also wearing new clothes. The family is having a picnic for his birthday and he's allowed to sit with them. While they eat, he discusses the book with Catherine and tells Jonathan stories, although he has to keep the dirty details out. He also keeps noticing the kitchen knife and fights the urge to steal it by distracting himself with a game of tennis. At the end of the picnic, the couple puts Tommy to sleep again to take him back. The next time Tommy wakes up, he discovers he's been chained up in a small room upstairs. There's a table with words carved on its surface. Chris shows him the railing he's installed on the ceiling for the chain, so now Tommy has access to many parts of the house. Catherine also gifts him her special bell, saying this is a sign of trust in return for the progress he's made. A few days later, Chris extends the railing and now Tommy can go downstairs too. However, there's a lock so Chris can control when that happens. Tommy thanks them by showing off some tricks with the chain and the railing. In the afternoon, Tommy asks Jonathan who the previous owner of his room was, but before Jonathan can answer he's called away by Chris. Meanwhile in the city, Rena is being followed by some mysterious people in a car. When she goes to Chris's house to clean, Tommy notices she looks sad and says he'd beat up anyone who makes her miserable. He also tries to make her remove the lock but she tells him she doesn't know the password. Later Tommy sees Catherine in the garden staring at nothing. He asks Chris if they still do things as husband and wife, but Chris changes the subject. At 6 o'clock, Catherine notices that Rena is still in the house even though her shift has already ended. Rena explains that she's being followed and believes that the trafficker who got her out of her country has found her again. Catherine invites her to stay with them until it's safe to leave. Afterward, Rena takes a shower and Tommy flirts with her when she leaves the bathroom. That night, Tommy gets naughty with his hand, causing the bell to keep shaking. Chris hears the noise and checks on him, only to find him busy. He scolds him and tells him to use the bathroom for that. Chris also admits that Tommy was right about him needing to be more romantic with Catherine, but he'll need Tommy's and Rena's help. Sometime later, Tommy and Catherine discuss the books they've been reading. After Catherine says that illegal uppers are just a form of escapism from what matters in life, Tommy explains that some people have a very rough life, so uppers help them keep going. In the evening, Catherine goes downstairs and discovers that Chris has prepared a romantic dinner in the garden. Rena acts as their waitress and Jonathan plays music so the couple has fun dancing. Tommy can't help but cry a little watching them. When Rena comes inside, Tommy begs for her help, asking her for a knife. Rena only opens a drawer in the kitchen before leaving. Tommy desperately tries to reach the drawer, however the chain isn't long enough. Using his feet, he manages to open the drawer a little more and steals a skewer that he hides in a plant pot. That night, Chris brings Tommy some cookies to thank him since he hadn't seen Catherine so happy in years. Tommy asks why Chris chose him and points out that someone obviously was chained up in this room before him. Chris denies it and leaves. The next morning when Chris leaves for work, he doesn't see another car nearby. The men quickly go through the gate before it finishes closing and find the women in the garden. As soon as they start speaking a foreign language, the women run into the house in panic, but the men simply follow them. Rena cries and apologizes as she explains that these men are her family, so she has to leave. When Tommy asks her to stay, she jumps on him and whispers the lock password in his ear. The men pull her back, so Tommy attacks them, but they easily overpower him and beat him up. By the time Chris comes back, the men are gone and so is Rena. After comforting his wife, he checks on Tommy and gives him a beer, saying he's proud of him for fighting like a man to protect the family. He also says he'll buy the best security system in the market and they can install together like father and son. That night, Tommy chews some gum and puts it inside the bell to stop it from ringing. Then he steps on a pile of books and uses the password to remove the lock. Tommy goes downstairs and takes the skewer from the pot to start hitting the railing, finally releasing the chain. This makes enough noise to wake Chris up. After grabbing a gun, Chris goes downstairs, where Tommy breaks a glass on his hand to disarm him. Tommy then tries to escape, but the front door is locked. Chris doesn't look bothered and just asks him to stop. However, he gets nervous when Tommy points the gun at him. At that moment, Catherine joins them and asks them to be quiet because Jonathan is asleep. She tells Tommy that he doesn't really want to leave as she takes the gun away. Tommy freaks out and starts insulting them, saying he does want to leave and be his own person. When Catherine gets angry, she accidentally calls him by the nickname she used to save for Charlie, who turns out to be their previous prisoner. A furious Tommy tells them he'll never be the previous guy, so Chris opens the door and apologizes to Catherine, saying he doesn't want a repeat of last time. Catherine nods and tries to use the gun to self-delete, but Chris stops her just in time. Then Catherine says Tommy's name in a begging tone, yet he rushes out of the house anyway. After running for a while, he collapses in the middle of the road. Sometime later, Tommy returns home and a detective questions him about what happened. While he was in the hospital, he mentioned a family who kidnapped him, but now he denies it and blames it on the side effects of the medicine. He claims that for the past months he was just out and about with his best friend Jonathan. However, the detective has a hard time believing him. Tommy is then devastated to hear that his mother didn't go to the police when he disappeared. Gabby did. That night, Tommy goes to a club to look for Gabby, only to discover she's become an addict too. He approaches her with hesitation and she clings to him, so he decides it's time to make a hard choice. The next morning, Tommy packs his things and leaves the house without talking to his mother. He meets with Gabby and they leave together in his car. They drive for hours until they make it to the countryside. Tommy asks Gabby to trust him before putting her to sleep. After covering the car with gas and setting it on fire, Tommy carries an unconscious Gabby all the way to Chris's house. He rings the special bell and the gate immediately opens. At the door, the family is happy to welcome him back. Make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can watch more videos like this. Thanks for watching.